So imagine a grown man living in Brazil.
Okay.
He picks up his phone, changes the last 2 digits of some random American phone number, and just dials.
Oh, wow.
Right? He just sits there, heart is totally pounding, just to force himself to speak to some completely confused stranger in English.
That is, well, it's intense.
It sounds absolutely crazy, but it might actually be, the biological secret to true fluency.
Yeah, I mean, it is extreme for sure, but it perfectly illustrates this massive misunderstanding we have as adults.
Right.
We kind of think learning a language is this clean academic exercise, like you get a textbook, you memorize your vocabulary list, you pass a written test, and bam, fluency is just the prize at the end.
If only it were that easy.
Right, but language just doesn't work like that. It's not some engineering problem to be solved.
And that is exactly why we're taking this deep dive today.
Oh.
Because we are pulling apart this really fascinating framework by Renato Galdino.
Yeah, the 7 Trunfos.
Exactly, which translates to the 7 trump cards. And Galdino is this veteran English teacher. He has spent decades, literally decades, in the trenches.
Yeah, he really has.
And he advocates for a total radical shift. So the mission for you listening right now is to completely abandon that traditional study mindset. We need to shift into, a living the language mindset.
Absolutely. And to set the tone right up front here, the first thing you have to do is abandon the myth of the magic formula.
Yes. Oh my gosh, everyone wants the magic formula.
Right. But there's no secret website. There's no, rapid fluency hack, no app that will just instantly download a language into your brain without any friction.
Like the Matrix.
Yeah, exactly. No Matrix downloads here. There are no shortcuts. But, and this is the important part, there is a deeply human, incredibly organic way to learn that, frankly, we all used successfully once before.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because to understand how to actually live a language organically, we have to look at the ultimate, most successful language learners on the planet. I'm talking about toddlers. Every language totally from scratch, and they definitely don't use flashcards.
No, they certainly don't. And Galdino's framework places this massive emphasis on pure, unadulterated input.
Right.
If we actually watch children, their learning process is just completely inverted from how adults try to learn. A child does not sit down and study grammar rules for the first 3 or 4 years of their life,
Right. They aren't like conjugating verbs on a chalkboard.
Exactly. They simply listen, observe, and absorb. They take in massive amounts of external stimuli from their environment for years.
Years.
Literally years before they ever attempt to organize it into formal rules. The grammar comes last, not first.
And Galdino was incredibly dedicated to this specific method himself. Like, to learn English, he would force himself to watch movies without any subtitles.
Just raw input.
Yeah, just raw. And he said he barely understood anything in the beginning. But he did it deliberately just to force his brain to accept the newness of it all. He just flooded his system with the sound.
Which is brilliant.
It is. And he used this exact same method to teach his own kids. Samuel, who was 3 at the time, and Juliana, who was 7. He actually kept his original handwritten lesson plan from August 14th, 2004.
Oh, wow. He kept the actual paper.
Yeah, he kept it. And it's wonderfully simple. It just says, level, children, and the lesson is, what's your name? With chairs.
With chairs.
Yeah. He was just creating an environment of pure input and physical action rather than like a boring lecture.
That makes total sense.
But wait, let's be realistic here for a second. We aren't toddlers.
True.
Like, I have a mortgage. I have a fully developed prefrontal cortex.
Okay.
And frankly, I am really impatient.
As we all are as adults.
Right. So sitting in front of a movie that I don't understand at all just feels like a complete waste of time. How does passively listening to noise actually help an adult brain?
Well, it's a totally valid frustration, but it stems from a pretty fundamental misunderstanding of what the brain is actually doing in that moment.
Okay, how so?
Because it is not passive listening. You aren't just, letting the noise wash over you while you zone out and think about grocery shopping. It's about active receptivity. You see, your adult brain has spent decades optimizing itself to only hear your native tongue.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it literally filters out foreign phonemes as irrelevant background noise. It's just trying to save energy. So when you deliberately flood your brain with foreign stimuli, like the specific sounds, tones, and intonations of English, you are basically sending an alarm bell to your nervous system.
So wait, you are basically trying to trick your brain's filtering system.
Precisely. Your brain is, at its core, a survival organ.
Right.
When it's constantly surrounded by a new, incomprehensible stimulus, the reticular activating system in your brain finally stops ignoring it. It realizes, wait a minute, this is my new environment. I need to understand this to survive and connect socially.
Which is exactly how we learned our mother tongue in the first place.
Exactly. We absorb the acoustic map of the sounds until our brains recognize this desperate need to interact. And only then did we actually start mimicking.
That childlike mimicking actually points to a massive blind spot for adult learners.
Oh, absolutely.
We obsess over the lyrics,
Right.
like the specific vocabulary words on a page, but we completely ignore the music.
Yes, the melody of it.
Yeah, and if we are absorbing input like a child, we aren't just reading a dictionary. We're picking up on the physical, almost musical cues of human communication. And this kind of moves the conversation entirely out of the brain and into the body.
And this is a really crucial pivot in Galdino's philosophy. You have to value the rhythm and the body language just as much as the vocabulary. Every single language has a distinct cadence.
Right.
If you try to speak English using the rhythmic timing of Portuguese or Spanish, you simply won't be understood, even if your vocabulary and grammar are technically flawless.
Well, Galdino had this really brilliant way of practicing this rhythm. When Barack Obama was elected, Galdino literally memorized and repeatedly imitated Obama's inauguration speech.
Oh, it's a great exercise.
It is, because he wasn't just reciting the text. He was mimicking the pauses, the breathing, the exact cadence of the delivery. He was treating spoken English like sheet music.
Which is exactly what it is.
Yeah. And there's this other anecdote he shares that perfectly illustrates how physical this whole thing gets. Imagine a father hitting his thumb with a hammer. Right.
Okay, ouch.
Yeah, and he lets out this massive swear word.
A very relatable scenario, honestly.
Totally. And the young child standing nearby immediately repeats the swear word. Now, the child didn't look up that word in a vocabulary book. They didn't, study its etymology.
Yeah, of course not.
They absorbed the visceral, physical, highly emotional reaction of the father. They read the room, they read the body language, and they linked that physical reality of pain and frustration directly to the sound.
That is such a powerful example because they're connecting emotion to sound.
I've really never thought about it like that before. We treat language like it's a math puzzle, but it's actually closer to going to the gym.
That's a great way to put it.
To me, it's like trying to learn how to dance by exclusively reading a textbook about foot placement.
Right.
Like you can read about where your left foot goes on beat 4 for years, but eventually you have to close the book, actually listen to the beat of the music, and physically move your muscles to understand the dance.
That is a perfect analogy because Galdino makes a very literal anatomical point here. The tongue actually is a muscle.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we forget that. We treat speaking like a purely cognitive function, like it's all just happening in our head.
We do, but English is not a phonetic language. The way it's written is often entirely different from how it actually sounds. And on top of that, the English language requires your tongue, your lips, and your jaw to move in ways that your native language has probably never required.
Right. The resting position of the tongue is entirely different, isn't it?
Exactly. Therefore, speaking a new language requires literal physical training. It is a muscular workout to master the non-phonetic sounds and the connected speech of a new language. If you just read the textbook, your mouth simply hasn't done the reps.
So the muscles literally haven't fired.
Exactly.
That makes so much sense. But this brings up probably the most common roadblock.
Which is?
Well, let's say you understand the science, right?
Yeah.
You know you need massive input to trigger the survival organ. You know you need to focus on the rhythm. And you know you need to physically practice moving your mouth muscles.
Okay.
How do you actually apply this if you don't live in an English-speaking country?
Yeah.
The classic excuse I always hear is, well, I can't afford to live abroad, so I can't immerse myself.
Right.
And secondly, even if you try to practice, how do you overcome that paralyzing, stomach-dropping fear of sounding completely foolish in front of other people?
Yeah, so the location excuse is honestly one of the biggest myths in language learning. Galdino completely debunks the idea that you need to go abroad to learn. Absolutely. He insists that you can create an immersive environment absolutely anywhere. I mean, he did it right where he was in Brazil. If you aren't physically in the environment, you just have to manufacture your own immersion.
Which brings us back to that crazy image from the beginning of our deep dive.
The phone calls.
Yes. To manufacture his own immersion, he used to record phone calls with foreigners, listened to them dozens of times until he understood the rhythm, And then he would call those random phone numbers in the United States.
It's so bold.
He would literally just change the last few digits and dial solely to force himself into spontaneous, unscripted conversations with complete strangers in English.
It takes an incredible amount of audacity. It really does. But it highlights a core component of his framework: absolute receptivity and the willingness to embrace a very specific cultural concept.
What's the concept?
Well, in Brazil, there is an expression called pagar mico.
Pagar mico.
Right. It translates literally to paying the monkey, which essentially means doing something embarrassing, losing face, or just making a fool of yourself in public.
Having the sheer courage to pagar mico.
Exactly. And there's a profound psychological mechanism at play here regarding how we view mistakes. Adults view grammatical mistakes as these massive, shameful failures. We try to avoid them at all costs.
Oh, completely. We hate looking stupid.
But Galdino argues that mistakes aren't failures at all. They are highly emotional, incredibly potent learning events. Just think about the neurobiology of embarrassment for a second.
Okay.
When you make a mistake and feel that sudden flush of shame, your body actually releases a spike of adrenaline.
Oh, so your fight or flight kicks in.
Right. And that adrenaline spike tells your amygdala to signal the hippocampus, which is the memory center of the brain.
Oh, wow.
And it essentially says, hey, this moment is highly significant for our social survival. Record this permanently so we never, ever do it again.
That is fascinating.
You will never, ever forget a vocabulary word that you used incorrectly in front of a room full of native speakers. The embarrassment physically burns the correct usage into your neural pathways.
So the embarrassment isn't like a side effect of learning. The embarrassment is actually the glue that makes the language stick.
Exactly.
If you never risk the embarrassment, you never get the glue.
Precisely. You're avoiding the exact biological friction required to internalize the language. And this ties into how we actually process foreign words internally, too. Galdino uses this brilliant software analogy to explain the difference between genuinely thinking in a new language versus relying on something like Google Translate.
Oh, I love a good analogy. Let's hear it.
He asks, can you think in Russian? Assuming you haven't studied it, the answer is obviously no. Why? Because you simply don't have the Russian files installed in your brain.
It's a missing software issue. You just can't run a program you haven't downloaded.
Exactly. A computer cannot open a JPEG picture file if it doesn't have a photo viewer program installed. Similarly, you cannot process spoken English in real time if the foundational files aren't deeply internalized.
Right, if you have to translate everything.
Right. If you rely solely on instant translation apps or constantly translate everything back to your native language in your head, you become addicted to the translation mechanism, not the language itself.
That makes total sense.
You have to internalize the words so deeply through massive input and physical repetition that they bypass your native language entirely. Just think about words that have crossed over globally, like delivery, catch-up, or self-service.
Oh, that's a really fascinating test. Because even non-English speakers use those words without translating them back into their native tongue first.
Exactly.
Like the person in Brazil doesn't translate delivery into Portuguese in their head before ordering food. They just know what delivery means intrinsically as a standalone concept.
Because that specific file is successfully installed. They've experienced the concept of delivery in a real-world context so many times that the word exists completely independently in their mind. That independent existence is the ultimate goal of immersion. You want to install thousands of those individual files.
The brutal part about doing all this work, though, is that eventually the honeymoon phase ends.
Oh, it always does.
Right. Let's say you were the perfect learner. You're absorbing childlike input. You're mimicking Obama speeches in your living room to get the rhythm. You're bravely calling random numbers and making a fool of yourself. You were doing all the reps.
Yeah.
But then you hit that wall.
Yeah.
You wake up one day and it feels like your brain is just completely full. The excitement drops off and you genuinely feel like you haven't learned a single new word in weeks.
It's a terrible feeling.
It really is. It makes you want to quit entirely. But neurologically, that plateau is actually an illusion, isn't it?
It is entirely an illusion, but it is the exact moment where most adult learners give up. When you hit that wall, it feels awful. Your perceived learning speed drops to 0. But this phenomenon actually has a scientific name. It's called the learning plateau.
Okay.
What is actually happening beneath the surface is a process called neurological consolidation.
Consolidation. So the brain is basically organizing the files we just talked about.
Exactly. You have been rapidly absorbing chaotic new information. Your brain has been storing this in short-term working memory. During a plateau, Your brain is finally taking the necessary downtime to build structural synaptic pathways.
It's moving the files.
Yes,
Right.
It is moving the data from chaotic short-term storage into permanent long-term storage. The feeling of being stalled is just the conscious mind feeling locked out while the subconscious mind does the heavy lifting.
Oh, wow.
You are still learning. The progress is just horizontal rather than vertical right now. It is solidifying the foundation. If you panic and quit during a plateau, you actually interrupt the consolidation process.
So you really have to just write it out. You have to trust the biology.
Yes.
And Galdino actually maps out a motivational loop to help learners survive this exact phase without quitting.
The cycle, right.
Yeah, it all starts with a decision. You make the firm, uncompromising decision to learn the language. That foundational decision gives you the fuel for perseverance.
Right.
And if you can persevere through the massive input, the physical muscle training, and those highly embarrassing mistakes, you will eventually get results.
Absolutely.
When you finally see those results, when you understand a movie scene or successfully order a coffee without panicking, it sparks a massive wave of motivation. And that motivation circles right back around to reaffirming your initial decision.
It's a beautiful system.
It's a total self-sustaining loop, provided you don't break it during a plateau.
Right. But the challenge is maintaining that loop when the results temporarily become invisible. How do you feed that motivation when you just feel stuck?
Well, Galdino offers a really practical diagnostic tool for this. Look backwards.
I love this part.
When you feel trapped on a plateau, go find a text, an article, or a YouTube video from like 3 months ago that you thought was incredibly difficult. When you look at it now and realize how effortless it has become to understand, it completely shatters the illusion that you aren't making progress.
It really does.
You realize, oh, wow, I actually have grown. My foundation is significantly stronger than it was.
It's a vital shift in perspective. You have to stop obsessing over the mountain of things you don't know yet and start maximizing and celebrating the things you do know. Galdino uses a wonderful phrase for this. He says you have to learn to administrate your ignorance with tranquility.
Administrate your ignorance with tranquility. That is such a brilliant way to frame it. You aren't failing. You are just managing the things you haven't consolidated yet.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? If we synthesize all of Galdino's insights, the core message is a total paradigm shift. You have to stop treating a new language like a sterile math equation that needs to be solved on paper.
Yes.
Embrace the messy, intuitive, childlike joy of pure input. Practice the music and the physical rhythm of the language with your actual body. Have the sheer, audacious bravery to pagar Miko, to make a fool of yourself, and let the adrenaline of those emotional mistakes be your greatest teacher.
Beautifully said.
And above all, trust your brain's biology when you hit that inevitable plateau. Your brain knows exactly what it's doing.
It really does. But, stepping back, this raises a deeply important question, one that builds on everything we've uncovered today.
Okay, what's the question?
If our brains are biologically wired to absorb language best through meaningful emotional reactions, physical body language, and the highly memorable sting of making human mistakes,
Right.
what happens to our learning when we increasingly rely on sterile, AI-generated language apps?
Oh, wow.
Think about the environment we are creating with these tools. These apps never judge us. They never use physical body language, and they never, ever let us organically pay the monkey.
That's so true. There's no embarrassment with an app.
Exactly. So by removing the social embarrassment from the learning process, are we stripping away the exact human friction that makes a language actually stick in our minds?
That is a phenomenal question to leave you with, and it honestly challenges the entire modern tech approach to learning. Because at the end of the day, human language isn't that clean clinical X-ray or that perfect engineering schematic we expect it to be.
Not at all.
It is murky, it is highly emotional, and it is beautifully, messily human. You have to be willing to step away from the safety of the textbook, close the app, and actually step out into the noise.
Absolutely.
So keep learning, keep making those glorious mistakes, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.